Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. Thank you for tuning in to Conversations with Dr. Don. The show is produced and broadcast from the Portland, Oregon, USA. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is that we have decided to talk about. And this evening we'll be talking about carrying discipline, and perhaps a little surprise along with carrying discipline, the book written by JoAnne Nordling over here, and her cohort in here is Lorraine Heller.
Yeah.
All right. So, welcome.
Glad to be here. Thank you for asking us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you feeling right now?
Good. Good. How about you?
Good.
Yeah.
You look happy.
Yeah.
How come I'm the only one nervous?
Well.
So as you know, the show goes in 2 major segments. The first segment is what I call the bio segment. I talk to you about who you are and your history and where you came from, so people have an idea of why it is you're doing what you'll be talking about in the second half of the show. And the second half is we were talking about carrying discipline and the surprise. But before we start anything else, I got Bernie Sanders' new Our Revolution, and I finished it a couple of evenings ago, and it's just fantastic. And I thought I knew a lot about him from watching so much about him and other stuff. But it all comes together in this book. I highly recommend it. You won't be disappointed. It's a seminal work, if I may. Bernie, one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Mine too.
especially interested to read about when he was young. A lot of interesting, you understand why he's the person he is when you read about his youth.
Yeah, have you read this yet?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I
yes,
haven't read it yet, but I'm waiting.
So you're behind the times.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. But I've heard a lot about Bernie, certainly.
Yeah. And if I ask you a question that you don't want to answer, you can tell me to get lost or whatever, because now and then I goof up and I miss my cue. So let me know if you don't want to answer a question. You don't have to.
Okay.
So the first half is personal stuff and who are you? And who should I address first, you or
JoAnne.
you?
It doesn't matter.
She's the author.
We're partners.
Yeah.
Okay.
We founded Parent Support Center
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
And how long ago was that?
I think it was, we started teaching classes in 1988 using the rough draft of the material and kind of testing it.
Mhm.
And then in 89 we incorporated and made it Parent Support Center.
That's a long time ago.
And then
Yes.
the first edition of the book was published in 1992,
And this is your fifth?
5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
This is the last edition. I'm not going to do it again.
So let's start with you, Lorraine.
All right.
All right.
All right.
If I were to ask your best friend, who is Lorraine, what would he or she say? Lorraine is, be your best friend.
Be my best friend.
Just be
Well,
the first person.
I grew up here in Oregon. I'm a native Oregonian.
You're talking about, you're in the first person now. You be your best friend.
Oh, I'm supposed to be my best friend
Yeah.
and
Oh.
talk about me.
Oh, talk about
Yeah.
yourself.
Talk about-
Oh, that's going to be
Tell
hard.
Don
It's
about
always
your
hard
best-
to tell about
Tell
yourself.
Don about Lorraine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Lorraine.
Lorraine is
Yes, yes, Lorraine. Grew up in Oregon. I like the environment. My dad took me camping a lot and into the wilds of Oregon.
Okay.
So I've always loved, she's always loved the environment.
Yeah, you got it. It's a little difficult sometimes. Okay.
Yeah.
When
Very
and
difficult.
where were you born?
I was born in actually Chicago, so I guess I can't call myself a native, but I think I was conceived here in Oregon, so that counts, right? And they
you were
went
there,
back.
were you?
Well, they went back to Chicago, and I was the first baby, and my father was playing in the symphony out here in Oregon, the Portland Symphony, and so he was traveling between Oregon and Chicago, and then they hired him to be the first horn player in the Portland Symphony. So then we came out here and lived. So I always called myself a native. Yeah. And I went to Lincoln High School here, lived in the Multnomah area,
Mm-hmm.
then went to Oregon State College.
Multnomah, that's in the Portland area.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And got married, had 5 kids. Unfortunately, my first husband died when he was young, so then I had to go to work, and the job I got was in Head Start. I worked for the first Head Start program. She did, I should say. She did. She was all right. She worked for the first.
You're not your best friend anymore. You can be you now.
Oh, good. Oh,
So
good.
let me ask you some questions.
Okay, all right.
Anything significant about your racial or national or cultural heritage that's worth telling the guests about, telling the viewers about? Anything significant, or are you just plain old American white bread?
Yeah, American white bread. I guess I identify with Sweden. My grandmother was Swedish.
Uh-huh.
Came over when she was a young woman.
Do you have a religious preference?
I'm Unitarian.
Oh, and did you have a different religious preference earlier on?
Yeah, we went to the First Congregational Church, the big one down here in Portland. Yeah.
How long have you been a Unitarian?
Oh gosh, let's see.
Okay,
I
that's
think
enough.
since that's hard, but I think I know my 3rd daughter was born. It would be 1959.
I was a Unitarian for years before I
58, I
became a
think.
humanist. And they're similar, depending on which part of the country you're in, as to what the Unitarians are about. And some chapters say, well, don't talk about God, the Unitarians, and others sound like they're a born-again Christian organization.
Yeah. Well, I like Unitarians, though.
How
I feel
about
very
your-
comfortable.
Yes, of course.
being Unitarian.
How about your education, formal education? What'd you get?
Well, I just got a Bachelor of Science, I guess. That's what you had to get those days when you went to Oregon State.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I studied to be a teacher, but I ended up being a recreation director. I mean, that's what I ended up being. I think I was one of the first ones to graduate in the School of
You're a
Recreation.
pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and but I couldn't go back to that job when my husband died because I had young children. So I knew I couldn't work in the evenings, because I couldn't leave them in the evenings. I didn't feel like it anyway. And so then I became a Head Start teacher. For 20 years, I was a Head Start teacher in Washoe County.
Gosh, I bet you've got some stories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and being in the first program that we had here in Washoe County.
So when did you stop that kind of ongoing work? You're not doing it anymore, are you?
No.
Of course not.
Oh, no. No, I retired. I'm trying to think. I think I retired in 87. Or 88.
Yeah, that's when we started teaching
Yeah.
classes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I had just retired when JoAnne and I
yeah.
talked and decided what we were going to do here.
Yeah. And you mentioned your husband who passed. What was he about?
Well, he was a wood technologist. He was Jewish, so that was one of the reasons I guess we looked for Unitarianism, because we wanted to find something that we could both felt comfortable in.
Sure.
So, and yeah.
And you had children, you said?
5 children.
5.
5 and 8 years. So I was busy.
Where are they now?
Where are they now? Well, I've got 1 in Minneapolis, 2 in Portland, 1 in Seattle, and 1 in Eugene.
Do they like you?
Oh, yeah. I feel very good about my children.
When are you going to remarry?
When
When are you going to remarry?
When am I going to?
Remarry.
Remarry. Oh, I did remarry, yes.
I told you
I
I'm
found
silly.
another Unitarian.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your political persuasion, are you left, right, center, or what?
Well, I'm afraid I'm with Bernie Sanders. That puts me left. Way left, right?
What are we going to fight about? We're all like Bernie Sanders. And occasionally I'll get someone from the other side and we have a good fight.
No.
Always in a good spirit, of course. Being a Unitarian or a humanist, I have to behave lovingly and all that stuff. Never mind. Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations. You belong to anything that you want to mention for the viewers?
You mean
Unitarian?
like Unitarian? I've always supported ACLU. And I've been an activist in Portland here for a long time. In 1986, I went on the Peace March, the one that marched across the country
Yes.
to take down the missiles, which of course we still have up. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Your credentials are in absolute good order.
Oh, all right. Good. Good.
Persons from the past or alive today, any names come to mind? Any persons that you remember that you came in contact with?
Well, I met a lot of people at the Peace March, of course. You know, a lot of even famous people that we talked to and everything. But
Yeah.
no, I don't think that I
Okay.
have a lot of famous people I know. No.
Any people that you knew in your life that you didn't like very much?
That I didn't like very much.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, I don't think.
Like Hitler or
Oh
Stalin?
well,
or
Hitler,
those
yeah.
people,
And
Mao
now
Zedong.
we've got, you know who? I don't know whether I can say his name over there.
Yes, you can.
Trump.
Oh!
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't like him.
It's scary.
It's very scary.
What's
for me,
going on
yeah.
there? So we'll save that for later on.
Yeah.
So let's switch over to JoAnne Nordling. And you ready?
Yep.
And I got a trick question for you somewhere along the way and catch you by surprise, all right?
Okay.
If I were to ask your best friend, what would your best friend say? JoAnne is what?
I don't know what my best friend would say about me.
You have no
because
idea
it's
what he
so
or
hard
she
to
would
get in
say?
other people's minds. I have a lot of friends. I'm very grateful for my friends. I guess they would say I'm a good organizer.
So she's a good organizer.
They would say I'm a good friend, I think.
Uh-huh.
I don't know what they would say.
Okay then, when and where were you born?
I was born in Minnesota, a
Minnesota.
little town called Wyndham. Lived there till I was 3 years old. And from that time on, my father was sort of a nomadic personality, and we moved every year, almost every year of my life until I got married. Almost every year. So we lived in South Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Minnesota, South Dakota, Minnesota, then Oregon, then California, then back to South Dakota. So I moved around a lot as a child, and I'm sure that was a big impact on my life.
Did this spell of wet weather and snowy weather here in Portland in recent days and weeks, did that take you back to when you were a little girl back there in Minnesota?
Not so much, but I do remember when we lived in Oregon. I lived in Independence, then I was in high school. In 1950, there was a huge snowstorm here. And I remember that winter. It was worse than this storm we had.
And that was unusual, huh?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Why were you born?
Why? Just accidentally, I suppose. Just because my mom and dad, I don't think I was planned. I doubt if any of my siblings were planned. I have 9 siblings, and I don't think any of us were planned. No.
And where are you in the birth order?
I was the 3rd one.
3rd one. I'm the 12th one of 12.
Are you the 12th? I once asked my mother, I said, Mother, I was about 40 by then. I got brave enough to ask her, and I said, Mother, why did you have so many children? Because we weren't Catholic. And she said, oh, just stupid, I guess. That's all she would say.
A religious preference.
Well, I'm Unitarian. We belong to the same
Were you
organization, but I'm in the Unitarian organization. We also have a Buddhist group, and I helped organize our Buddhist group. So I consider myself Unitarian Buddhist.
You're weird.
I suppose.
I love it. Anything significant about your racial or national or cultural heritage worth repeating?
No, Swedish on my father's side, English on my mother's side, and nope. That's. I think I was very. I have 4 sons, and I've often thought grateful that my kids weren't born African American, because I think young men's lives are in danger just by the color of their skin.
Yeah. We're going to see things different now with this new administration that just took power.
Yeah.
Mm. We'll see. We'll wait and see what happens.
Do you believe in God, that there is a God?
Well, the Buddhist, I really am pretty much Buddhist, and Buddhists don't have a concept of God. It's not helpful. Somehow it isn't very helpful. Everything is one interacting, constantly moving, karmic thing. But we don't talk about God, so it doesn't. I substitute the universe.
Sure.
For God.
Uh-huh.
But fine, it's fine if you want to talk about God, it's fine, but it doesn't mean a lot to me.
Of course.
It doesn't resonate with me.
How about you, Lorraine? Do you believe that there is a God, or there isn't a God?
No, not really. I don't. I belong to the humanist group at the fellowship.
Uh-huh.
So, but often I think I'm probably an atheist, really, if it comes right down to it.
That's a pejorative.
I know.
I'd like to say I'm an atheist rather than atheist.
Oh,
There's
that's good. That's a good.
So then I conclude agnostic, a skeptic, all those other terms.
Agnostic, yeah. Yeah, my first husband called himself an agnostic, and the first time I had him go to a Christian church, the minister preached that that's the worst thing you can be, because you're just on the fence. You know, and I've always remembered that. So maybe I'd rather be an atheist than.
Well, I'm on the fence. I can see on both sides.
Oh, that's what he should have said.
Pretty good, yeah. First time I thought of that. We want to have two other guests, not before the camera, but they're in the studio with us. You want to mention who they are? Who are in the studio right now?
Oh, sure, yes.
Who's here looking at us going on?
My son Eric, my second son Eric is here.
Uh-huh.
And JoAnne.
Yeah, she's my good friend, JoAnne. She lives across from me in the Trillium Hollow community where we live.
And she's one of our teachers, one of our wonderful
Yeah.
teachers.
You're not on camera, but thanks for coming and keeping these people out of trouble. You mentioned children?
4 sons.
4 sons, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Your political persuasion, need I ask that anymore?
Yeah.
No, you said it.
I'm a Bernie person, too.
Yeah. Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations, anything come to mind?
I belong to all kinds of, things I donate to, but as far as membership of political organizations where you're really involved, I'm involved right now in starting our local group of Indivisible. You've heard about the Indivisible?
No,
group?
I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? Oh, right. Okay, so the Indivisible group, about a month or 2 months ago, these 30 congressional aides put together a 26-page book that taking the Tea Party guidelines, how the Tea Party moved through these 8 Obama years to create so much far-right presence in Congress. Mm-hmm. And so they took those ideas and have put them into a 26-page guide for people who are like us, Bernie people, to try to bring Congress back to a little more to the left. And so part of the strategy is to form neighborhood groups, and the Indivisible people send out weekly, maybe 3 action items, and call and go sit in your senators' offices, even if you agree, even if they're your political party. Keep on them all the time, because they've got all this pressure coming at them from their contributors, from the big corporate interests who have the money.
Sure.
So they need to know that the people out here are watching and listening. And so that's very exciting. So that's my big involvement right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to do that.
Yeah.
I think Michael Moore talked about that when he made his speech.
Michael Moore.
Yeah,
Michael I know, he's my hero.
I will send you the Indivisible
Please do.
on email. Yeah, I'll do that.
Please
So that's
do.
my big political involvement right now.
Now, persons I admire from the past, I think I start with Jesus. I was a Roman Catholic. I went to I was an altar boy for years in Through Battle, and I gave up being a Catholic when I found out how goofy it was. Became a Unitarian and then a humanist. And Jesus was my first hero, and then I guess Gandhi and Martin Luther King and a few other people like that. I'm missing a few, but that gives you an idea. I've been asking this question for a long time, so I've refined my answers for myself right now. So how about we take a break and come back and talk about serious stuff?
Okay.
A break, Mr. E. I'll do it. Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. And for you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there. And we're going to continue on with the show talking about caring discipline and a little bit about the election results here. And there is the book that JoAnne wrote, the 5th edition, and we're going to be talking about that and what you said in this book and what it's about and how useful it is. Okay. A couple of questions that I had about the election. Do you have any thoughts or feelings about this presidential election? Any thoughts come to mind that's worth sharing with the viewers?
You want to start? I know we both have a lot of opinions.
Yeah.
We need 3 hours.
Yeah, this is, I guess, when I was young, I felt things were progressing and that we were getting better. But I never thought in my life that I would see an election like this and a president like this. Never, ever did.
Why do you think that's happened?
Why do I think it's happened? Oh,
yeah.
I don't know, a lot of reasons. I think our culture, to me, I think it's kind of sick right now. I don't know exactly what has made it that way, but it just seems like a lot of things. I know that I got into fighting for mandatory minimum sentencing, and I started looking at who was going to prison, and I thought, where have I been? Where have I been that I haven't been paying attention? And I think a lot of us just haven't been paying attention to what's been going on. Yeah, but it's scary right now for me.
Yeah, bottom line for me,
scary.
scary. That's the first adjective that comes to mind for me. It's really scary. And I find it affects my ongoing day-to-day, even moment-to-moment existence sometimes. If a thought crosses my mind or I'm watching the news or something, and I see a certain character on television telling some more lies, and I get, upset again. And it hasn't gotten to the point where I have a serious depression, but sometimes it interrupts my sleep.
Oh, yeah.
As I think about the latest shenanigans that he's up to. But anyhow, what do you think about the election and its result?
Well, I have a very definite opinion about why this has happened.
Please.
I think it's because of the power of the corporate influence on American politics. Many people in Congress are bought. I mean, Cory Booker, the 2 senators from Washington, they voted in favor of the drug companies, not, they did that, and they're Democrats. And they did it because they were so dependent on that money that comes in order to run for election. So I think that has been progressively getting more extreme, and I think an awful lot of people are just turned off. They say, to hell with it. Both parties are the same. I don't think they're exactly the same, but both parties are the same. They're both in the pocket of the corporations. What the hell? And so when Trump came along, Bernie came along on the left and said, the system's crooked, we got to change it.
Yeah.
And I think his ideas were honorable. I think he really meant what he was saying and the things he would do. When Trump came along on the other side and said, this is a corrupt system, we have to change it. And they were both presented as outsiders.
Yes.
And so if Bernie had, I think many people who voted for Trump would have voted for Bernie if Bernie had run on the Democratic side. Because I think that there's that anger about our government doesn't represent us. It represents the corporation.
Yeah, and he fed into that anger. He was able to do that.
Right.
How's the countdown clock? I don't think it's working. They'll do something in the control room.
Okay. Well, anyway, I feel very strongly that that's the reason, and it's the reason so many people voted for Trump. They probably would have voted for Bernie if he'd been running.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people are speculating that Trump will not last a year before they find some sort of a reason to kick him out of the presidency. Do you think that's possible?
I think it's possible.
Anything is possible, I suppose, but even if that happens, we still have this Congress, the House and the Senate that's full of far-right Republicans, and they're going to control things even if Trump wasn't there. And Mike Pence is very, very far right. So that's why I think this indivisible, that continually focusing on trying to change the makeup of Congress.
Yeah, we've got to vote. People have got to
and individual citizens have to do whatever they can.
Call every week. Call every week.
Things happen.
Go to town hall meetings.
Yeah. Any characters in the Trump entourage that you particularly like or don't like at all, like Kellyanne Conway?
There's only one that I like. There's one that I can't even remember the guy's name, but it's the guy who's in the trade position, because he's against the TPP. Yeah. And so maybe Trump is going to keep his word about that. Maybe he will. And I really like that. I mean, I feel like Bernie, if he's going to do something that I'm for, I'll give him credit for it.
I can't figure what's going on from day to day with this administration. There's a few people who I admire, very progressive, and someone suggested that this is really a coup d'etat. It's a generals, and looking at the parallels between what's going on in America now and what went on in Germany in the 30s.
Oh yeah, he reminds.
And there was a big scare many years ago, not too many years ago, that the Russians started spreading communism all over the world and going to take over the world with communism. Well, isn't that indeed what's happening now with America wanting to take over commerce and the world government and influence crony capitalism as the dominant feature of our planning and our existence? And no, I'm grinding my axe now.
Well, it is kind of corporate world rule.
Yeah, and it's the right wing all over the world now. The far right. It's so scary.
Yeah. And what about the Women's March recently? Wasn't that phenomenal?
Oh yes,
it was.
It was wonderful.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
So, any more questions about the election? And shall we go on and talk about caring discipline?
Well, of course, we want to talk about caring discipline.
All right, now. You can decide who will start. I have the questions here, too, don't we? Yeah. What is the story of Parent Support Center development? What is the story of how Parent Support Center developed?
You tell that story. She tells this story really good.
Yeah.
Parent Support Center. Say what Parent Support Center is.
Say it what it is.
Oh, yeah. Well, the Parent Support Center is an organization that Lorraine and I started back in 1989. And we saw this need for low-cost parenting classes. And I had the material I'd developed when I was a counselor, a school counselor, gradually developed it, and then we started teaching it. We were always volunteer. We never made any money at it because we were just determined that it should be really low cost. And over the years, we've had to actually start charging people money, although we always give free scholarships. Nobody's ever turned away because they can't come.
Yeah, and we just kind of accidentally ran into each other.
Yeah, so you tell this story.
Yeah, we were at a potluck the West Hills Fellowship has a lot of potlucks, and I had just retired, and we were just talking in the kitchen.
I had just retired.
Yeah, and JoAnne had just retired too.
West Hills Fellowship, that's a Unitarian
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Church.
a Unitarian group. Yeah,
group, not
Yes.
church. It's the
Yeah.
name for it.
Yeah, it's a fellowship.
Gathering, fellowship.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know which one asked the other, but I think that you asked me, well, what are you going to do now, Lorraine, that you're retired? And I thought, well, I thought I might try teaching some parenting, because I had been working for Head Start for 20 years, and I realized how desperate they needed it. But I didn't really have a system. We would go and we'd have a talk on discipline or getting to sleep or eating, and we'd learn something, but I could never put it all together until I got a look at JoAnne's material. So that questions were really answered, because they'd ask me a question and I don't know about that. I couldn't, there wasn't anything to hook it with. And so that was really exciting for me when I saw JoAnne's material.
How did you arrive at the material that you have in this book and to do with Parent Support Center?
Well,
over the years, you just gathered it from different sources?
Well, of course, I was a mother of 4 sons,
Uh-huh.
and then I went. Then I was a teacher, and then I was a counselor, and discipline is a problem in schools,
Mm-hmm.
and so I would go to all these workshops, especially when I was in counseling training. I'd go to all these workshops, and in this, for instance, the one about logical consequences, the STEP program does a lot of logical consequences. It's wonderful, but then what do you do when this logical consequence is not what you need to use? It's like the mother that I once saw. He was kicking her in the shins, and he was screaming and hitting at her and kicking her, and she was holding him at arm's length and saying, "No, honey, now what's the matter?" And so she was using Carl Rogers' listening to feelings. Well, that wasn't the right thing to do when someone's kicking you in the shins. And so gradually I began to realize, oh, this fits here, this fits here. Oh, there are 4 different kinds of misbehaviors, 4 different kinds of corrections. And sometimes it isn't a misbehavior at all. It's just the kid's got a real problem. And that's when you need to listen, So anyway, I finally put it together. I think of it like a puzzle. And I finally put all the pieces of the puzzle together, and they're represented on a chart that you can.
Yes,
so
I love that
there's
chart.
really no situation that comes up now in our parenting classes that you can't refer to the chart.
Yes, you can
try
refer
this
to
or
it,
try
and
that.
it's like a toolbox full of things you can use.
And it's all in this workbook, huh?
Yep,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
all in there. And we also have some online things that people
So little
watch.
Johnny's kicking mom and kicking mom, and what do you do in that instance?
Well, that's what we call, that's an aggressive behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And so the child needs a timeout. We don't recommend timeouts very often, but only for really aggressive behavior, or when a child's totally out of control and hurting themselves or hurting others, then they need a timeout or to be physically restrained. And one Head Start teacher said she'd been giving timeouts for all kinds of misbehaviors. I forget how many times she said during the week, 30 times a week or something like that.
And that used to be the only thing that people would do.
That's all they knew to do.
That's all they knew to do.
And so she said after she went through the class, she said timeouts maybe twice a week. So there are all these other things you can do that.
That's the toolbox.
But that's an
aggressive.
aggressive behavior of the timeout.
Mm-hmm.
And then we go into great detail on how you do the timeout, how you do a physical restraint if you have to do it.
Caring discipline, and the other discipline, the non-caring discipline, what's that like?
Well, the old Victorian stuff where you beat the child, there was the belt, and there's a lot of spanking. Even when I was first started in counseling, the principal said to me one day, "JoAnne, come on down to the office because I have to spank a kid and I need a witness." The law said you could spank a child, but you needed a witness. And I said, "I'm not going to go watch you spank a child. You'll have to find someone else to be a witness." I was shocked.
Yeah.
And you didn't do it?
No.
Whoa. Rebel from the get-go.
I wasn't going to watch him spank
How do you know
a
that your
child.
program is effective?
Oh, gosh.
We get
we
constant
do.
feedback.
Well,
from
for me,
parents.
too, my grandkids have been brought up with this material because my daughter, when she had her first baby, she got a hold of JoAnne's material. And actually, she got a group together and they discussed it. And so she started using it when Sonia was very little. And now, my daughter Sonia is a teacher, Metzger. She has her first grade class. And she's using this material. And it's so exciting to see that happen.
Yeah, that is.
Yeah, and she's got a lot of stories in the book here. JoAnne's put so many stories in there, true stories of incidents, so that the parents could help understand the material. And Sonia has a lot of stories in there.
Sonia was a powerful little personality,
she was
as we used to say.
a powerful girl, yeah.
Is there a
Yeah.
particular example here that you want to use to tell us about, or shall we just keep asking questions?
Gosh, let's see. There's several. Well, one thing I could say is that even when these kids were little, they would start using the material in JoAnne's book. Yeah, and I just heard them. Sarah told me this story. She was, well, she had little Peter by then. These were two kids. Sonia was 2 years older than Peter. And she said, Peter was just trying her all day, and she was just so upset with him. And she had to go down and pick up somebody from nursery school. And as she put Peter into the car, he bumped his head. And it's just such a little bump. And she said, I just felt like saying, oh, just stop crying now and get ready to go down. And Sonia piped up and said, oh, Peter, it was really hurt when you hit your head like that. And he stopped crying. And she said then she realized that Sonia was using the inner reality, what JoAnne calls inner reality, which is one of her best techniques in the book. And she was little. She was probably 4 years old.
Because
and
Peter wasn't misbehaving. He had a problem.
He wasn't misbehaving.
He had a problem, and she was listening.
And Sarah was just upset, paced. She'd had it up to here with him, and she wasn't sympathetic at all.
I'm thinking about, isn't it important? Empathetic connection is the most vital between big people and little people, and mothers and babies for sure.
We're all human beings.
Yeah.
A lot of people actually say this works with adults too. They often come back to class and say, "Oh, that works with adults too."
Yeah, I had many proofs of that too. Yeah.
You want to tell the story about the woman who? Well, I'll tell it, but it's Lorraine's story.
Yeah, it's my story. Yeah.
Second, in the control room, I don't see a countdown clock, so give me some signals of how much time I have left from time to time, so I'll know when we can start winding down. What do I have left now? About 15 minutes or something?
19 minutes.
Well, I can't see it until you just put it on. Now, will you leave it on? Okay.
I haven't switched it, sorry.
Now we have clock time instead of countdown time. I'm not reading it. I can't see it. Never mind. Let's keep going.
Okay.
She's going to tell the story.
Well, one of the most important concepts, I think, is paying attention to a child at neutral times. We usually pay attention to them when they're being naughty, misbehaving, or we pay attention to them when they're really good and they're doing what we want them to do. But when neutral times, if they're just walking through the room, if they're just sitting petting the cat, if they usually pet the cat, that's a neutral thing. We don't pay any attention to them usually. But that's the time when you pay attention to someone, they're not earning it, they don't deserve it, you just pay attention to them because they're there.
They're just breathing.
They're
That's
just
what I like
breathing. Yeah, they're just breathing.
Yeah.
And it's such a powerful thing to be paid attention to if you're just breathing. It's really an important feeling. So one of the stories was the mother, her husband was going to school full time, he worked full time, they had kids, she worked. Their life was just ships passing in the night. They were both getting resentful and snipping at each other, and she felt resentful. He wasn't helping. She knew why he wasn't helping, but so she thought, okay, he used to go in his bedroom every night at the desk and would do his homework for his college classes, and so she just walked. She said, I'll pay attention to him. It's neutral time. So she just walked in, and she just leaned over and she said, hi, honey, and then she walked out. She would do that sometime every night. And she came back to class the next week.
Oh, she was so excited.
She was so excited, and she said, do you know what happened? He brought me flowers. He's never brought me flowers. Our life is so much better. And she thought that was the reason.
Simple little actions indicate love.
When you pay attention at neutral times, it's really powerful.
And then you can get a connection back with a child that you're having problems with.
And you know, kids will often act up when adults are sitting at a table, then the kids will start to mess with the milk or, you know, do things that cause the adults to turn and say, now stop that, Johnny. But if the adults would just make eye contact with that child as part of the conversation, the child probably will not act up, because that's all he wants, is to be included in the conversation.
See me, recognize me.
That's
yes.
right.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had people try that tactic, and it's amazing how it improves behavior.
Okay, how do you raise enough money to fund the program? How do you raise enough money to fund the program?
Well, that's a
our
problem.
problem.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Because
Okay.
we never turn anyone away for lack of money. And we have fundraising drives. We're getting better at that.
Yeah.
It's always been hard for us. We come out of that generation of women that just volunteered for everything, and so we never have gotten paid, of course. But we have to pay our teachers. They're good teachers, and they deserve to be paid. So we have fundraising drives, and then we do charge money for the classes now, which we didn't used to when we started.
No, we didn't.
But people said, you've got to charge money.
They even told us that they wouldn't feel it was worthwhile.
That's right.
Which was still hard for me to believe, but I guess it's true.
But so we're growing, we're expanding, and I think we're going to last another 25, 26 years at least.
Typical class size.
Well, it
We had all
varies.
sizes.
Maybe from 8, sometimes it's been as small as 6 or 8 if we can get enough money to do it, to as many as, one of the Laurelhurst classes was like 18. Sometimes I think we've split it and had 2 teachers
I had a
teaching.
big group, I remember.
And
I had like 30 people.
Yeah, I've had. And remember, we did workshops for Head Start that were 100 people.
Yeah,
but
we've done big
that's not really a class.
Right,
It's more of
that's
a
like a
lecture
lecture.
thing.
Yeah, this book is designed for a small group and for people to get together and learn the material together.
Kind of laugh and
Yeah.
cry together and
And it's
know
a
that they're not alone.
a chance to talk with
Yeah.
other
They're not
parents,
the only ones who have the problem.
which is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's good for big people to be with each other the same way.
Yeah.
Oh yes, yeah.
Someone said, the kindest thing that you can do to me is to listen to me. And that means listening beyond what you can see, listening with all my senses, with all your senses, and even those we haven't quite identified yet. Someone talked about if a stranger comes to the door and little baby doesn't like that stranger, or even before the door is open, that's kind of reaching. And if the puppy or the dog doesn't like that stranger, there's something going on there. There's some other communication besides just what you can hear and what you can see. So if we pay attention to what our senses are telling us, and if little Johnny's misbehaving, maybe he's telling us he needs to be recognized, to be affirmed, that he's somebody to be respected. That's loving.
That's always important.
And to practice that with people, or even with strangers, and to deliberately do it, it's kind of a trick, is to pay more attention than you usually do, as long as the person wants you to pay attention to them and wait and have them recognize that you're indeed paying attention to them, and you won't leave them until they recognize that. It's stroking is powerful. And then they have a secret satisfaction. I know what's going on, you don't know. I'm really listening to you because I really want to listen to you, not because the book says I should do it.
That's right, and none of this material, which I say in the book, none of this is going to work if you use it to manipulate.
Right.
It only works if you really care about the person.
Yeah.
And that's the underlying, that's why caring discipline.
Caring discipline.
Otherwise, it's just a bag of tricks.
That's right.
It's like,
That's right.
yeah.
So discipline has a negative connotation to it, the term discipline. So
one of the sentences I borrowed from Lorraine that starts the book is the person who started Head Start. he said discipline, what's his name? I forgot his name.
Jimmy Hines.
Jimmy Hines.
Yeah.
He said discipline is the slow, day-by-day process of teaching children the sense of behaving in a certain way. I like that definition.
Okay. How do my viewers donate? www.parentsupportcenter.org, and we had that up on the screen right there. So they can go to that website and contribute to help keep this program going.
Right. Yeah. It really means a lot.
So, what age groups do you have in these
children? Well, we've had parents of 2-year-olds to 18-year-olds, and it's
really that broad.
And we can divide it into all just teenagers and just little preschoolers, but it doesn't usually work out that way. It usually works out that they come from all ages, and it works fine, because it's really about treating human beings.
Yeah. It's not just babies.
I do have a chapter just for teenagers, just about teenagers, because obviously you have to do some things differently with older children, but it works for all kids.
Are you enjoying your being alive now and doing what you're doing?
Am I what?
Do you enjoy your being alive today?
Yeah, I'm very grateful. Yeah, yeah. You get into your 80s and every day is a treasure.
Yeah. What gives you a moment of pleasure or enjoyment? Just surprises you and surprises you, and what happens? Suddenly, I feel good and I feel affirmed. That's a trick question because I've got an answer for it.
Okay.
How about you?
Maybe you should answer it.
I'm not sure where I got it from, but I'm utterly fascinated with little children and babies, and sometimes my wife gets jealous, or even little dogs or baby anything is beautiful for me.
Of course.
And
I think we're hardwired for that. Yeah.
Everybody likes babies. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if you've seen this wonderful documentary called Babies. You can watch it on Netflix. I don't know, maybe the library has it too, but it's 4 babies, one from birth to 1 year, and it's from a Mongolian baby, San Francisco baby, and then a Nambia in Africa, little country of Nambia baby.
Yeah, yeah.
And what was the other one? Tokyo,
yeah,
a Tokyo baby.
Yeah,
and that is the most, if you like babies,
I love them.
You will, and there's no narration. It's just filming the baby doing her thing, learning new things. It's just a wonderful documentary.
We were in Sweet Tomatoes the other day, and we were in a corner away from because Sweet Tomatoes, you've been there before.
Yes, I've been there.
Big families.
Yeah, I've been there too.
And it gets kind of noisy sometimes. And my wife couldn't see what was going on because she was kind of backed in the corner, and I could see what was going on. And there was a fascinating family, and only I could see the little person who must have been 18 months old or so. And we didn't have anything particular going on in our discussion, and I was listening to her, and then the baby would catch my eye. He was doing something ridiculous or goofy. And for example, I went back to get a second helping or something, and I came back and I noticed he had a collection of macaroni around his high chair. I mean, you couldn't walk near his high chair.
On the floor.
Was,
that sounds like my kids.
And nobody cared. He was having it. And I was just so charmed by it. And I think she was a little jealous. I was paying more attention to the baby than I was to her.
Oh.
And I had to recognize it and then stroke her too. Babies, they always make me smile.
Yeah.
And no matter what's going on, and when I see a little puppy, even if his tail isn't wagging too much, I'm charmed.
Yeah.
What gives you an instant surprise pleasure like that? And I keep looking at you, but I want to ask you too.
Oh, about...
What makes you smile on a surprise, something you've seen or experienced, and you find yourself smiling? Give me an example of something that causes that to happen for you.
Oh, gosh. Lots here.
Yeah.
Well, we have new children at our fellowship or at our community now, and they come up they come up just to play in my house. They like to go around and look at everything that I've got in my windows, and and that is fun. It's so much fun to have them. So maybe like you, I like babies. Yeah.
How about you, JoAnne?
Yeah, and I love being with my great-grandchildren, especially when I'm with them alone. To be with them with the family, it isn't the same dynamic. But to be with them alone doing things, it's just a wonderful feeling.
I love the spontaneity of a child.
And then another thing that gives me a great deal of pleasure, which is very intellectual, I suppose, but I love learning new things. I just love learning a new thing. And I get a real rush of pleasure from that.
No matter how old we get, right?
Being a psychologist, I guess I look at human behavior a little more intimately than most people do. And I find when I learn something new at my age, and I'm 88 this year, no, I'll be 89 this year, and there was a time when I'd say, boy, what'd you do that for? You should have known better. And now when that happens, I say, wow, that's a new learning. It's a hooray instead of what a dummy.
All right.
It's adding to the bag of tricks or whatever it is that makes life more enjoyable. So what's going on at the fellowship that's worth talking about?
Well, we have a new minister. And
time.
And last Sunday she got up and lit the candle and talked about the Women's March and about politics. And I thought, oh my goodness, this hasn't happened for a long time.
Politics, huh?
Yes. So I was quite encouraged. I like her.
I know what's going to happen next Sunday. I'm going to light a candle next Sunday for the man who died frozen in a metal tool shed in Beaverton.
In Beaverton?
In Beaverton.
A
friend of mine who runs Faith Cafe, he feeds the homeless Saturday and Sunday with a lot of help from many churches. And I saw him yesterday, and he brought a blanket in to me, and he said, we need a bolt, we can buy a bolt of this material, cut it in 100 pieces and make 100 blankets out of it, and the kids in the shop classes at Aloha High School have a commercial sewing machine, and they can sew the rough edges. They're pretty warm and toasty. And so he said it costs $400 for a bolt. That makes 100 blankets. That's only $4 a blanket. Wow. So I'm going to light a candle for that man who died, and I know that that's not solving the homeless problem, but I'm going to tell people I'm going to stand out in the entry with my blanket and my peanut can, and I'm trying to get people to each buy.
Do that
and I've already collected $50 from friends who happen to come by the house. But I'm sure they'll be open. The fellowship has always been open to stuff like that.
Of course, yeah. And what kind of material is the blanket made of? Is it wool or cotton?
Well, no, I think it's an artificial fiber, but it looks.
Probably.
Yeah, it's some kind of a fuzzy on one side, and then I think inside it has a very tiny layer of foam. And on the other side, it's another fuzzy layer, so that it feels quite warm, and even though it's not heavy at all.
How'd that baby die? The guy died in the tool shed?
He froze.
It's
a
been so cold.
A week ago or a couple of weeks ago.
I didn't hear about that.
Do you know why he was out there in that kind of weather?
No, I know my friend Arnie Leppert, who manages Faith Cafe. He's been.
Arnie, he's one of my heroes.
Oh, he's one of my heroes too.
Yes.
And he said he's been after the mayor of Beaverton to create a shelter, and the mayor has said he's going to try to do that before he retires, because we need a permanent building. But they did open. They got 100 new beds this winter, in the and for the homeless. But it's not enough.
Is there a website for Faith Cafe?
You know, I don't know. I bet there is.
Arnie Leppert. Arnie Leppert. Arnie, we love you, buddy. Okay.
Yes.
So we better start winding down, huh? We got a couple of minutes left now. you have a final thought or comment for the viewers before we shut down for the show. Look at the camera over there and tell the viewers what you want to tell them. Anything comes to mind for you right now?
About our conversation.
About anything. Anything.
Well, another good thing I was going to say about the fellowship is they have this show there now, which is, it's this woman from Portland, who a Jewish woman that went over to Israel, and she was looking at the Palestinian people and the Israeli people, and from a different point of view, she said, because she says she's neutral on the subject, but she's showing conversations that are just wonderful. It's a wonderful show.
Well, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and February 3rd at 6 o'clock at the fellowship, they're going to have another showing of it. And she has videos.
And that's in Beaverton, the fellowship.
It's on Olson Road. I guess, is that?
Yeah,
It's
but the
technically a
fellowship is
Portland, I
located in Portland?
Yeah, well, it has a Portland
In
address,
Olson
but
Road.
it's really close to,
It's close to Washington Square.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's between Garden Home and
It's in Washington
Square.
County.
I remember I used to go there regularly. How about your closing thought or comment?
Oh,
Look
I
at
would
the
just
camera.
urge people to join with your friends, contact Indivisible, and do what every week they send out a few things to call your senator and representatives about, and they advise that if you call a different representative or somebody else's senators, they won't pay any attention to you.
Call
You
your
have to call your own and be on them all the time. So,
Well, I'm sure glad you guys came aboard, and I hope we had a good discussion, a good
I enjoyed it.
conversation. And I want to
It's
tell
fun.
you about a few public service announcements. I think it's time for those, is it? Oh, the ACLU. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be further down the tubes than they are already. And we got to learn how to end corporate personhood. Go to movetoamend.org. And that will say that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. Thanks for watching, and remember KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. He always does that to me. Thanks again for watching, and we'll talk to you next time. Good night.